Welcome to Equifax Unlocked. My name's Craig Tebbert. I'm Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer. And at Equifax, we're always looking at solving real customer issues and challenges today. And one of the big challenges that we're here to talk about is something regarding to ESG and carbon footprints called financed emissions. And I'm delighted to have Brad Davis with me. Brad is our in-house expert on all things ESG. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you, Craig. Good to be here.
So, financed emissions, a big hot topic in our industry and for our customers. Can you help us understand what is it and why is it such a big issue?
Yeah, sure. So financed emissions are essentially greenhouse gas emissions that a company like a financial institution or a bank had to report on a yearly basis. And these are attributed to their lending facilities. So think of their lending portfolio or their investment portfolio. You think of the carbon attributed to every pound that they lend out or invest into other companies. So this is the carbon calculation that they're having to do on a yearly basis.
That sounds really, really complex. I can't even begin to think how a company would try and solve that issue. And I hear a lot about scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. Could you explain the difference between those and why lenders now are having to focus on this scope 3 emissions change?
So over the past few years, we've had scope 1, scope 2, being really reported on, and they're a lot easier for companies because they're directly attributed to them, so they can control them. Where you buy your energy, where you buy your buildings, things like that.
Right.
Whereas scope 3 is more around what you're investing in and indirectly. So it doesn't matter whether you invest in X company over there or be an oil company or a solar panel company. They're two very different companies. So you have the investments that you're putting in is very different to what you have control over as a company.
Okay, so just to get this clear, so scope 1 and scope 2 are all the things for running my business, right? That's the fuel that I'm putting in the transport, that's the lighting, the heating, all of those things. They're the things that I guess are somewhat easier to calculate. But then this scope 3 emissions is if I'm lending or investing in another company in whole or in part, I then have to understand what that business does and
Correct.
their carbon footprint.
Correct. And that's where it becomes really difficult for these companies, right? Because they're having to rely on traditional SIC codes. So these codes have traditionally not been great because sometimes you're getting companies who are saying they're a consultancy company, but they're actually potentially a farming company. Yeah, you really get the two differences, and they're very too high level. And that's why it's really difficult for companies to find what that company really does as a company. And that's what from a data side, that's a real struggle for companies and having to find that.
And to do a bit of jargon busting there. So an SIC code is a standard industrial classification, is my understanding. And that's how business are classified at Companies House.
Yeah, correct. Okay. And that's obviously data that we have and a bit beyond that as well. Okay.
So complex issue. Lenders today spend, how long would you anticipate trying to get this stuff right?
They can spend, between 2 months or more calculating this, especially if you have a really large lending portfolio or investment portfolio. So you can imagine if you're trying to, calculate the carbon emissions for every single loan or investment that you're doing, that can really get into hundreds of thousands of calculations that you're going to have to do, right?
Yeah.
And have to report on that every year.
Every year?
Correct.
And this change came in when?
So it came in tail end of the start of this year, so they're starting to report on it yearly from now.
Right, okay. So Equifax, data analytics technology company, we've recently put our commercial bureau into the Equifax cloud. How do we help customers?
So we take our commercial cloud native data, as you say, from our cloud system, and then we utilize that data from a bureau side, and then we utilize carbon calculations from third parties as well, and we basically combine that all together to really effectively create one calculation for each facility of a company for our client, so a bank, for example, and we can do that across their whole portfolio, all within a few days rather than months, as I said, from their side.
Scope 1, Scope 2, and then Scope 3 emissions. That scope 3 emission sounds like a really complex problem and a challenge for customers. So how can Equifax help?
It's a massive problem for them, and it's also why we built the finance emissions calculator product. So we can really take away that headache that clients have at the moment, where they're having to go trawl through different websites to try and find out what a company really does. And also, if you think about it, you have to do it for every single loan and investment on the portfolio of a client. So you're talking hundreds of thousands of facilities or loans that they're having to do that calculation, and we can take all that headache away and do that calculation utilizing our Equifax cloud and utilizing our data to basically do all that calculation for our clients, all through our secure file gateway, and we can get that from them. And once they tell us the companies that they want us to screen, or we utilize our own data to screen on, then we can easily, quickly, within a few days really, actually send that back onto the client, all nice data packaged up with all the finance emissions calculations in it.
So if I'm a lender, I've got my portfolio of data, I can upload it securely, safely and securely via Sterling File Gateway. That gets processed through the Equifax cloud using a number of data assets, differentiated data, return it back, and I get my calculations, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And that's me done for a year.
Correct.
Okay. Fantastic.
Or you can also have it on a daily, monthly basis, however often the client really wants it.
Right, okay. So I can choose the frequency. As I add new business to my portfolio, I can keep running those through the process.
Yeah, exactly. It depends how active the company, the bank or financial institution wants to be on calculating their emissions.
Okay.
From a regulatory perspective, it's a yearly basis, but we're seeing more movement on being more regular. You know, how do you actually manage your emissions down effectively? Because as we know, the Paris Agreement, and we have the net zero by 2050. It's only we're halfway there now. So clients really have to start to manage their emissions down, and this is how they can really start to do it.
Okay. So if I'm a lender watching this today and I'm thinking, wow, how do I cope with this scope 3 emissions? It's putting a big burden on their business. This sounds really exciting. It sounds like a game changer from Equifax. How do I find out more?
It really is a game changer and pivotal time at the moment for the industry. So they can go to our website and find out more information, and also a link, and they can book a consultation with with one of our team members, and they can start the process of onboarding them or looking at more information around it and get them up to speed on it.
Brad, thank you for joining us. Thank you for uncovering the myth that was financed emissions and the complexity and bringing such clarity to that. Thank you for joining us on Equifax Unlocked. We look forward to speaking to you again.